countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
If you go down in the woods today, you're sure of a big surprise. If you go down in the woods today, you better go in disguise. Beneath the trees where nobody sees, they'll dance away as long as they please. That's the day the teddy bears had their picnic.
What the hell are you talking about?
That is Henry Hall and his orchestra here on The Last Comic Shop. Yes, 1932, he wrote Teddy Bear Picnic, which is a really, really weird song. It's about, like, teddy bears that come to life and they play around in the woods, but, like, the way he sings it, it kind of sounds super creepy. And so I was trying to do my best Henry Hall impersonation there. I'm the host with the most, Andy Larson, and welcome back to The Last Comic Shop. I'm joined, as always, by Jay Scott and Chad Smith. But the reason why I was talking about this stupid song is because the first moment that I saw the title of this week's book, Beneath the Trees, and then I saw a bear, first thing I thought of. And I was just like, boy, oh boy, if they didn't listen to that song and then write this book, I will eat my hat. That's
but
right.
It's not just beneath the trees. It's beneath the trees where nobody sees.
Yes.
It is. It's about weird anthropomorphic animals that go around in the world with real animals. That's what sent me. There's bears, and then there's talking bears, and there's pigs shopping for pork. I was freaked out. That I don't know.
Yes, you're right. It's kind of like that whole, like whenever you watch an old Disney cartoon and you're like, wait a second, Goofy and Pluto are both dogs, but Goofy gets to wear pants? Like, I don't understand this. Like, how does this work? And how does Goofy, like, have a cow as a girlfriend? Like, that just seems unnatural in a lot of different ways. Any case, yes, we're reading Beneath the Trees, an Eisner nominated.
Nobody sees. That's the name of it. It's not just Beneath the Trees.
Yeah, it's in the indicia.
And it is up for an Eisner Award this year for a Best New Series. And the Eisner Awards are going to be released later this week at the San Diego Comic-Con. So in preparation for that, it is award talk time. Yes. At the Last Comic Shop, we're not going to go through all of the categories. You can go online and look at that if you want to. But we are going to cherry pick some of our favorites and maybe predict some winners, at least the ones that we want to win. So without further ado, I think we're going to start off with the most heated of all the categories. And I'm going to go to Jay Scott for this one. J.A., who's up with Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees for Best New Series?
A couple that we've actually covered on the show. Black Cloak by Kelly Thompson and Meredith McLaren. It could also be Best Limited Series. I don't know. They said they were going to put out a second trade worth of stuff when they got around to it. Local Man by Tim Seeley and Tony Fleeks. Phantom Road by Jeff Lemire and Gabriel Hernandez Walta. And Somna, a bedtime story by Becky Clonan and Tula Lotte.
Yes. Yeah, a real stacked category with a lot of names that we've covered on the Last Comic Shop, whether it was, talking about Barnstormers and Tula Lotte, who I think won last year for Barnstormers with Scott Snyder, but also Tony Fleeks, who we've interviewed on the show before, Kelly Thompson and Meredith McLaren that we've interviewed on this show before, Gabriel Hernandez Walta, who we've talked about with the Vision series that he did with Tom King, and even Jeff Lemire. So I'm going to throw it to Chad. Of all of these books, which one would you like to see win Best New Series?
Well, to being 1,000% honest, I have not yet checked out the Somna or the Phantom Road book, so it's a 3-horse race, and 2 of those horses are limited series in my mind. So Beneath the Trees, we're going to talk about today, ran 6 issues. That story's done. This is going on break.
Maybe. I don't know.
Is there an issue 7 solicited?
I don't think so, but that does not mean that he might. Yeah, I don't get that. I don't know why they call that new series. Maybe they just ran out of limited series.
Maybe. And the same with Black Cloak. I enjoyed the heck out of Black Cloak. I thought that, it was really well done. It had all those familiar fantasy elements, but shaken up and just a unique enough perspective. But for me, being the resident 90s nut, Local Man by Tim Seeley and Tony Fleeks, it really scratches an itch that I have in a couple of different ways, because it not only gives you the 90s style adventures, it also then gives you the modern update of what had happened to those characters, 30 years later, and, the more realistic take on things. And it is really just a fantastic work from Tim Seeley and Tony Fleeks, where they one does the art duty on one section, one does the other on the, that every issue is engaging. I know there was 9 and 2 specials, and then they just jump-started it again last month. And so every time that book comes out, I'm excited to read it. So that would get my vote.
All right. J.A., your vote goes to?
I mean, I really liked Black Cloak, but I also kind of agree with Chad that it to me, up until this point, I know they said they're going to do some more issues, but it's a limited series. They did 6 issues. Same with Beneath the Trees, which really felt like a limited series because the bear's going into hibernation. I mean, I guess the bear could come out of hibernation and start
That's right. There is
killing
spring.
people.
There is spring.
Spring is coming? I thought winter was coming. I guess spring is coming now. I don't know. I'll just say Black Cloak because I like the fantasy aspects of it. I thought the world building was really interesting. And Beneath the Trees, where nobody sees, freaked me out. So
See, I am of the opinion this is the
it'll probably win because
it's the indie darling this
people
year.
Like that.
The pub around Beneath the Trees over the past year has been so tremendous. And it is unlike anything else that's out there, really. And so, I feel like it's the front runner. I agree, though, with Chad that I really have enjoyed the heck out of Local Man. I am really, really happy that Chad recommended that on a previous show and brought that to our attention because it is really a great series. Moving on, I think Chad wanted to talk about one particular issue that he wanted to win, right?
So in the best single issue one-shots category, it's got Horologist, Star Trek, The Day of Blood, by one of my favorite, Ryan North, was working on that. Derek Charm from Squirrel Girl. I really need to check that out. I don't care about Star Trek. The Superman 2023 Annual, which we read, and I'll be 1,000% honest, I enjoyed it, but I didn't think it was anything special. And Sweet Paprika. But the issue that stood out for me in this category was Nightwing 105. The story itself is called You Are Nightwing, and it is told in the first-person perspective where you are Dick Grayson. You wake up and look across the pillow and see Barbara Gordon there, and then you get the big slurpy kisses from the dog. You go on an adventure, and you see everything through the eyes of Dick Grayson. And I am a sucker for a good gimmick, and this was just the perfect execution. There's even a cameo from the cast of The Office when Nightwing swings through their building. And it's just one of those things where every now and again someone will take comics and twist it around or do something special with the form. And I think it deserves the attention. I think it deserves the praise for not just having the gimmick of being the first-person perspective, but doing it so well. And that whole team of Tom Taylor, Bruno Redondo, they have just been rocking it on Nightwing. It's very sad to see that team call it a quits here after this next series. But this issue in particular, 105, if you haven't checked it out and you can find it at your local shop, it's definitely worth your time. It was something, as soon as I picked it up, I knew it was something special, as opposed to some of those other issues.
All right. Well, I'm going to put you on the hot seat real quickly, Chad. So what's a better gimmick, the first person in this particular issue or the one continuous panel?
He did a great job with that as well.
Was that the same
team? And they were also doing the meme covers throughout the course on Nightwing. The reason I would go with the first person perspective is because I've never seen this executed as well as this. Whereas the one continuous panel thing, I've seen that a couple of times. I'm thinking of the Silver Surfer 11 and the Dan Slott run, where it's the Mobius strip and the story weaves in and out and one continuous panel. And that was super impressive. So I think that takes the cake for me there. First person.
Do you think that they're able to get away with it because it's Nightwing and you could never do that on a Batman or a Superman book? All these they're really sort of pushing the envelope of the medium of comic books a bit.
Oh, heck yeah. And that's the beauty of having a Nightwing. I always talked about Daredevil as a Marvel book that had the advantage of that nobody cared about Daredevil. Like, you couldn't do the stuff on Daredevil that you can do on Spider-Man because people are actually paying attention to Spider-Man. So with this being a Nightwing book, they have the freedom and flexibility to try and experiment on things. And it's just really well done.
Yeah. No, I can agree with that. I think anytime there's an opportunity to do first person well, it really does jar your expectations of what's to come. I keep on thinking back to an old movie, which I highly recommend everybody check out. It's called Dark Passage with Humphrey Bogart. And it's all about Humphrey Bogart eventually getting a new face and whatever like that because he escapes from prison. But for like the first, 15 minutes of that, it's all done in first person as he's escaping from jail. And this was like 1947. And like that really wasn't a thing. And I remember watching that movie and just being like, boy, this reminds me so much of like what they do with video games nowadays. That whole first person forced cut scene where you're rolling a tube down a hill. Good stuff is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I love a gimmick. Give me a good gimmick any day.
Well, one thing that JA thinks is a gimmick every single year is one particular category they throw out at the Eisners. It's called Best Graphic Reprint. And I just wanted to bring this up first, not only to get his goat a little bit, but to kind of point out that there are quite a number of like really awesome books that are up for this category this year. J.A., do you just want to list them real quick?
Yes, Best Graphic Album Reprint. So you're getting an award because it sold so well that you're reprinting the comic book. Because it's, you know what it is? It's because they didn't give you an award the first time. They feel bad. So they're going to give you an award for reprinting it, even though I think a lot of these got the award the first time. Doctor Strange, Fall Sunrise Treasury Edition, The Good Asian, Hip Hop Family Tree, Orange Complete Series box set, and Wonder Woman Historia, which again is not a Wonder Woman story. She's just on the cover.
I'm not 1,000% sure whether or not Hip Hop Family Tree originally won an Eisner, but I do know that at least two on that list, Good Asian, which we covered on the last Comic Shop, that won one of the Eisners that year, and we just talked about last year Wonder Woman Historia, which also won an Eisner. So why not give them more? They're reprinting it. What else would you call that? Like, what would be a better award for best reprint thing?
I hate that reprint category, but I don't mind best publication design because the person who's winning that is actually the designer.
But you are right about the best publication design, right? Who's up for that award since you brought it up?
So, Bram Stoker's Dracula and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein box set, Gratuitous Ninja, Inside the Mind of Sherlock Holmes, Iron Maiden, Peace of Mind, and Toilet-Bound Hanaku-kun First Stall box set. And by the way, as I said, you're not giving the award to the people who wrote it or drew it. You're giving the award to the designer who designed the publication, the box, or how the book was put together. So when it sits on your shelf and it looks all cool when you're looking at it, that's the person who's getting the award.
I knew. How did I know it would come back to all about the design of the dust jacket or how it sits on my shelf? Of course, J.A. with the whole they changed the omnibus with spines, and now that all pisses, or the fingerprints that you can get on these Penguin classics. Like, of course,
most
J.A.
villainous design category goes to
yes.
Well, before we get to commercial break and talking about Beneath the Trees, guys, one last throw out. One book from this list you feel like deserves a shout out for being great. Chad.
Oh, there's so many. Daniel Warren Johnson on Transformers. I am reading a Transformers book. I should never reading a Transformers book, but that book was so much fun. And even after he stopped doing the art duties and it's still just serving as the writer, it's fun, it's violent, it's aggressive, it's heartfelt at times, and it's Trans-frickin-formers. That book is wonderful, but there's so many other people that we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about Mark Waid. Chris Somney finally got nominated for Firepower. That book was so great, I wouldn't even let Andy cover it on the show. We'd have nothing to talk about. Remember that time that book was awesome? Yeah. With these awards, you're celebrating the best of the best. And the people that got nominated are deserving. Although I was shocked by the lack of Marvel this year. I don't think we talked about it. They're like, where's Ryan North's name? More than just the short story category. Where's this Fantastic Four?
All right, off your soapbox. J.A., what's one that you want to give a shout out to?
Well, Birds of Prey. We reviewed it on the show. Kelly Thompson writing with Leonardo Basto Romero. And then what I like is there's a lot of indie press, it seems, this year. So I'm looking forward to finding some needles in haystacks and diamonds in the rough and maybe cover something on a future show here. So as they say, it's not who wins, it's an honor to be nominated. Because you never know, you could always get nominated the next year if you reprint your stupid issue.
All right. Also, your Peach Momoko is up for Best Cover Artist for Demon Wars Scarlet Sin at Marvel. I don't know what.
She's going to win all the awards next year. For her X-Men run. It's winning all the awards.
Before we go to commercial break, just throwing it out here. Best U.S. edition of international material. We didn't even talk about it. Another volume of Black Sad up for an award. I know that we read Black Sad on this particular podcast. Loved Black Sad. It's up for volume 7. They All Fall Down part 2. So, again, maybe Black Sad will get another great Eisner to add to its bookshelf. And one thing that you should add to your bookshelf is Beneath the Trees. We're going to be talking about this potential Eisner darling right after these commercial breaks.
BCWSupplies.com has everything a comic collector could need. Boards, bags, long boxes, and so much else for our ever so increasing collections. And you can save 10% on your total order by using promo code LCSPOD at checkout. Not only does this take 10% off BCW Supplies' already low prices, but it supports my favorite podcast, The Last Comic Shop. So get all your collecting gear at bcwsupplies.com and save 10% on your order with promo code LCSPOD at checkout. That's LCSPOD at checkout. Happy hunting!
Have you ever been reading through a stack of comics and thought, maybe I should see what this Arkham Asylum game is all about? Or been playing Marvel vs. Capcom and felt like you were at a real disadvantage since you didn't know who half the characters were? Well, Play Comics is the show for you. I'm Chris, and each episode we take a look at video games based on comic properties and how well they stick to that source material. So whether you know the comics and want to know how all these games work, or you know the games and want to find out where all this craziness came from, go check out Play Comics at playcomics.com or wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
And we are back, moving off of some Eisner talk onto an Eisner-nominated book in Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. And
that's right. This 6-issue miniseries, or best continuing series, one of those series.
This new series. It's
best
new.
New series. It is new. It started in 2023. It's illustrated and written by Patrick Horvath with letters by Hassan Otsmani El Howe. And it's coming out of IDW Publishing.
Yes, and what happens beneath the trees where nobody sees?
Oh, wow. Well, the 10-cent synopsis is simply put, it's like that show Dexter, about the serial killer that somehow maintains his innocence or whatever, even though, he's gruesomely murdering a lot of folks. But, yeah, you mash that up with Richard Scary books that you read when you were kids. So it's all wonderfully pastel-y animals, walking around in towns being, firefighters or folks that run the hardware store or police officers or the local raccoon that delivers the mail or whatever like that. Sam, who's a bear, she works in the hardware store, is our heavy. She is a serial killer that's been going to the city and basically kidnapping random folks and taking them out to the woods and cutting them up and putting them in paint cans. Burying them. She's been doing this for a really long time, but things become complicated when all of a sudden a new serial killer jumps onto the scene and starts hunting folks in her own little town. And will she be blamed for those murders instead of the murders that she did? It's a cat and mouse game. That's the 10
and there's literally cats and mice involved. It totally is Zootopia meets Dexter. But there's also non-anthropomorphic animals in this world. That's what threw me. There's Sam the bear, who talks and walks around and wears clothing, and then there's big grizzly bears that look like grizzly bears and don't wear clothing and roar and poop in the woods, I guess.
Like a pope.
Right.
I assume Sam uses a toilet.
But that's
I imagine it has those Snuggle Charmin bears paper towel.
Okay. Listen, it's no different than anything that you may see in those old Warner Brothers or Walt Disney cartoons. As I mentioned earlier, you'd have things like Mickey Mouse running around in pants, and then he would be in a house with other mice, which weren't like anthropomorphic. They were just mice. And it was in the same panel. I didn't see a problem with it, guys. For some bizarre reason, I was so into this particular series that I just went with it. They didn't even need to be animals. I get it that was the hook.
If they're not animals, is it as interesting as a story? It's not as edgy, right? Because you look at it and it's like a kid's book, except that she's friggin' homicidal maniac, psycho Patrick Bateman walking around.
But
Yeah. But hold on. There, at least he's in the world of business, and he has this fancily made business card, which has the error on it that we'll point out all over the internet later on. But here, you transpose that with small town ennui, and
And that's the thing. Like her whole thing is she doesn't mind that someone else is doing killings. It's just that don't do the killings in my town. Go to the big city.
You're gonna mess it up. You're doing it wrong.
Nobody will miss you.
Come on, it's all about like putting the lotion on your skin. You gotta make it. Serial killers have to maintain control. Like that's the whole point. Like she can't feel, like other people does. She doesn't have that empathy or whatever that normal people does. She is truly either a psychopath or a sociopath. I'm not sure which one is which, but regardless, she's one of them. And
one wears the prison gear and the other wears the 3-piece suit.
That's true. So she wears
she's cuckoo. But not drawn as a cuckoo. She's a bear, so she's not a cuckoo since a cuckoo is.
But that's why it works. Because, again, I think to your point, J.A., if this would have been just normal people and you were telling a normal story, there would be no edge to it. There would be no reason to care. It's a story that we've heard 1,000 times before. And although told here. Yeah.
I don't know what kind of stories are you reading, man?
There is an entire. My wife is a huge Dexter fan. There's an entire season of Dexter where Dexter goes up against John Lithgow, who's also a serial killer. And again, they play this cat and mouse game. It's the exact same thing here, because again, I love it when you have that contrast. I love it when you have that dichotomy of like this should be fun and cutesy and bubbly and oh, look at all the pastel animals and they're so cute. They're animals. They will eat your face. Bears are terrifying whether or not they're wearing plaid from LL Bean.
Technically, I would run away from a bear in mom jeans faster. You're not supposed to run away from bears, right? Because they can go faster than you and catch you.
That's true. Your option is playing dead. Who's the bear who came up with that idea? Yeah, just tell them to play dead if they see. That's the best way to go about it.
I loved this series. I'm not going to say much more because I want to hear what you guys think, because I think you guys are a little bit more on the fence. We're going to start off with Chad. Chad traditionally doesn't like horror-y, slasher kind of books. Did the animal thing...
I'm shaking my head. No, I did not like this. No, sir. Not one bit. No, thank you. It's. I'm going to give it the patented. This was well done, but I just don't think it's for me. Yeah. So my big problem is it well done? Yes. And we had brought up Black Sod earlier, In there, I didn't understand why it was anthropomorphic animals. Here, at least, I get it a little bit more. The style of it seems to lend itself more towards that juxtaposition, and you have, this glaze of everything is safe and everything is comfortable, and then you juxtapose that with, the wild natures of the characters themselves. And, there's that one covered issue 6 where you see Sam, and it's the two images of Sam on top of each other. One is she's got her goggles on and a straight face, and the other one is the bear screaming and a primal rage. That makes sense why the animal things are there to help you understand, on both levels. They're like the children's book to give you that safety and that comfort and that illusion there. And they're animals because they're freaking animals. They're going to tear each other's throats out and bleed them out in the middle. Now, these animals sometimes are nice enough to chop each other up into pieces and put them in paint cans and bury them in the woods. But still, animals, animal nature, like all that stuff, I get it. My big issue is just I don't want to root for a serial killer who's not like, it wasn't Dexter a serial killer, like killing people for good?
Well, yeah, he was. And I get it. It's hard to root for Sam as a protagonist when she is genuinely killing people with like nails to the back of the head. Like that was a better way to kill people than like ripping open their chests and hanging them on a mast of a float in a parade. Like, I get it.
It's less noisy.
I get it. It's really hard for you to care or want her to succeed. You want her to fail too, right? She's a bad guy.
Right. You want justice. I get the bad guys going after the other bad guy. And like that part is, could be fun. But just for me at the end of the day, like I put this down, I felt icky. I don't like it. Don't like, no, thank you. No. As
a longtime friend of yours, you know what? Because you had the same reaction when we read together, that Mysterious the Unfathomable by Jeff Parker, and like the Dr. Seuss characters out to be like real evil, creepy creatures, and you were like, no, I don't like that with my Dr. Seuss. My Dr. Seuss is nice stuff.
No, just no.
Okay. So yeah, me that likes it, Chad that's on the other side of the fence. J.A., where did you fall on this book?
Yeah, who wants to spend 4 hours or whatever reading about a bear that murders other people? I don't know. I could never get into Dexter, so maybe it's just not for me either. So I guess I'm more like Chad. The art was beautiful. The story was a little bit paint by numbers, to be honest. If we're going to be really honest about it, if it's not bears and cats and mice and all manner of animals from the Zootopia, where it was like a guy watched Zootopia and then said, oh man, what would make Zootopia better was if it was Dexter and Zootopia. Watch out for Patrick Horvath. He's working through some stuff. Beautifully drawn. It was
beautiful. Beautifully drawn. Come on.
I don't know if it was beautiful. I wouldn't say beautiful because there are some pretty shockingly horrific panels, like that duck getting chopped up, and then where the ghosts walk around with half their head missing so you can see all their brains.
Yeah, she's haunted.
And the one scene where he's talking to the character, and she's like, oh, those are your bowels releasing. Don't worry. That's a thing that happens.
Yeah, it was there's some very Hannibal Lecter moments. It takes a special kind of person to write that kind of stuff, and that person is not me.
Well, I applaud Patrick for, I don't know, just the originality of this. I just thought it was clever. I listened to that Teddy Bear Picnic song the moment after I saw this title for the first time, and I'm like, boy, that is a creepy song. Yeah, I'm sure that's where he's channeling that. That like underneath the facade or the sheen of some of like what we think is just such a comfy and cozy world that we live in, there is just some true awfulness that lives right underneath, and it lives in plain sight. Like it would in a children's book. Like, oh, look at those characters. I wonder what they do when they go home at night. Yeah, sometimes you don't want to know. You really don't. And I thought that was fascinating, to be very honest. I can get why you guys didn't like it. And I'm not a huge fan of things like Dexter, although I liked other things like Silence of the Lambs and stuff like that. I'm not going to say I'm like particularly like I love the horror or the slashers or anything like that, but I do applaud the creativity here. I think it was beautifully drawn. I think it was beautifully executed. I think the pacing was great. And that issue where she runs around and the ghosts are haunting her and she eventually sees the bear in the woods and she realizes she's a predator and she should stop acting like prey. Yeah, I just thought it was an interesting character study, to be very honest. So I wanted to see how it ended. Do I want to read more of this? Probably not. Like if they come up with a second series, I don't know. But for a one book, I thought it was cool.
What do you mean you don't want to read a second series? The bad guy wins in the end. They're all bad guys, but the bad guy wins. And then the rest of the town's like, yeah, it's cool now. It's fine.
So you want to see...
We haven't even mentioned about the cat that her husband as a stuffed like
just sit on the couch.
Yes.
Her husband died. That's how she was dealing with the grief. Oh, come on. It's to the point that you don't know what... It's beneath the trees where nobody sees. It's underneath the surface. It's what lives underneath the surface. It's what's in everybody's closets.
Yeah, they have butchers in this book. Do you think they have taxidermists? Like, is that a common thing? Is it, maybe it's just a cultural thing. We just don't know.
Who knows? Who knows? But one thing I do know is we got to get to our ratings. So we'll be right back with more of The Last Comic Shop right after these commercial breaks with our rating of Beneath the Trees as well as recommendations. So stay tuned for that.
LastComicShopPodcast.com is the destination for all things shop. Plan your week with upcoming show schedules, the latest books, recommendations, and chatter from the crew. Subscribe to the show on all major podcasting platforms from one convenient location. Show your support and browse the merch store. T-shirts, tanks, hoodies for the fam, coffee mugs, magnets, totes, and more. Check out exclusive content through the show's YouTube channel and follow the pod on Instagram, Blue Sky, Threads, and others. All this and so much more at www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com. www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com.
You know what I think? This world we're in right now is the fairy tale. And what's really real is on the other side.
Ramsey, mechanic by day, aspiring comic book creator by night, went into the woods and tripped. He was bombarded by bizarre and mysterious glyphs that he drew into his sketch pad and onto the body of his muse, Regina.
Oh, groovy! Your art is crawling all over me.
Shit. What is going on with you?
What's going on with you? All of a sudden, you're a complete drip, baby. Maybe you need another limb to the head. Ah!
Bloom, written and created by Ted Sikora, with art by Butch Mappa.
How are you feeling, Ram Man?
You've never experienced a story so astonishing, so far out and away from the beaten path.
Where in the am I?
Blast off with Bloom, the origin of a prophet. Order yours at herotomorrow.com.
All right, we're back with more of The Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for ratings, where we're not going to turn on each other like animals. We're going to try to do this civilized. That's right. We get a 1 out of 4 scale. Everybody gets their own take. And J.A. Sky's going to provide us with that 1 out of 4 scale right now. So, J.A., what is our 1 out of 4 scale for Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees?
Well, it's a very civilized paint cans filled with body parts.
Tasty. I thought that was awesome. Just that one scene where he's like, yeah, they're going to find all the paint cans. I was like, oh, geez.
I do have to question the police work, or rather shoddy police work in this whole thing.
A deputy dog.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not sniffing much out.
I think that's why they drew that, like, because we can all, that lovable old-time sheriff, that bloodhound, Darn it, Karn, sarn it.
I thought he was. I mean, they were channeling McGriff the crime dog.
Well, what are you channeling with your 1 out of 4 scale, J.A.? How many paint cans you giving this?
It's like 2.75 paint cans. It's better than average, but it's not great. And that's not just because the story didn't appeal to me so much. It was like they hook you with that who's the killer if it's not Sam, and then you find out who it is, and then you kind of know what's going to happen. So while I thought it was clever, I thought it was sort of maybe too clever for itself at times.
Okay.
Sort of taking that premise and just running with it on steroids. And I guess you have to either buy in or not buy into the whole Zootopia meets American Psycho. And if you like that, then you're all in. And if you don't like that, then you're sort of, why am I reading this? And again, you got these weird things like the bear and the bear, the real bear and the bear and mom jeans, or the fact that there's a butcher shop with pig heads in the window, and one of the townsfolk is a pig looking at the pig heads while she's shopping food.
Who's married to an owl? But
yeah, how does that happen? I don't know.
Well, there was a pig that wanted to marry a frog, so I mean,
Yeah.
it's not completely out of the realm of possibility.
If you're into sort of that sort of genre of storytelling, that macabre weirdness, if you like things like Silence of the Lambs or The Red Dragon or anything with serial killers, really, I guess Dexter, this would be for you. But I don't tend to like those things, so this wasn't really for me. Though I did like American Psycho, so I don't know where I'm coming down with that. That I think I liked it more because of 4.
I'm just a Huey Lewis fan. I knew it.
I thought you were more of a fan of that Phil Collins album he had. Any case, Chad, why don't you give your rating?
Okay, so I've already gone on record with the whole not for me thing. I disagree slightly with JA's take that this is either for you or not. Like, you either buy in or you don't. Because I guess my whole thing is, I don't like this. I didn't like it one bit. We were talking a little bit off air about how I tend to be really affected by the stories we read. And when people will take things from my childhood and manipulate them, that gets extra nose for me. Like, with that said, I can see and I can respect how artfully done this was. And I think I might give it a little bit more credit in terms of the process of the story itself. And I think just some of the psychological things going on in this story, they did a good job, playing with the different elements of who we really are and who do we show our neighbors and who we are behind closed doors and, the struggle that's there. And I don't know. I just thought there were levels on levels in this that I definitely appreciated. And the visual imagery, it was visceral at times. But I go back to just saying that it was artfully done, right? And so whereas the story gets a very big not for me, I do think it was well done. I do think it's worth your time to check out. If this does win the awards, I can see it, but I would, happily pass it up moving forward. So I'm kind of in two places with this. So for my rating, I'm going to go with a 3.25. I think it's high quality work. I think it's worth your time. I just don't like reading stories about the bad guys because I don't know. The way I live my life, I'm such a naive, trusting person that I don't want to believe that there are people like this out there, and I know that they're everywhere. And this is just a reminder, but it's a reminder with bears and ducks and gooses and all that other stuff, and that just makes it even creepier. 3.25.
Okay. Well, believe it or not, Chad, despite you being on one side of the fence in this show and me being on the other side of the fence, we're going to give it both the same grades. This is a 3.25 for me as well. This isn't the best book I've read all year. I think that it's Eisner Award winning for the creativity involved here. And I am a sucker for any time, again, when artists pull on that dichotomy of taking something that's safe and then mixing it with something that's extremely dangerous. I was a fan of not only like this series, but I remember last year or something like that, I recommended a great series that Image Comics put out called Survival Street, which was kind of like a parody of Sesame Street, except they were like violent guerrilla, not like monkey gorilla, but like guerrilla terrorists fighting against evil corporations. And I thought that was really well done. And again, it was the dichotomy between like something that I knew from my childhood and it mixed together with something that was definitely something that was more adult. I think this is different than, oftentimes when, they'll take like Masters of the Universe or Transformers or Thundercats or something and they'll adult it up. They'll add a lot of graphic violence and sex and stuff like that. Sometimes that doesn't work. But when you take an original idea, like the Richard Scarry, nice, animal characters, and then you show them as being animals, that works for me. And so I give a lot of kudos to Patrick for not only the visual storytelling that occurred during Beneath the Trees with Nobody Sees, but I think some of the snappy dialogue and the way, again, the pacing was handled throughout all 6 issues. I was on the edge of my seat for the most of it. Even though I kind of sort of knew how this was all going to play out, I was very excited to see it actually play out. So 3.25. It's still not the best book I've read. But if it won an Eisner, I'd be like, yeah, you guys should check it out. It's interesting, to say the least. And other things that we hope that you find interesting are our recommendations. That's right. In addition to Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, which you can find at your local comic book shop, although, gosh, I've now seen like graded copies of issue 1 in slabs going for like $250, $300 at this point. Hot book right now. These are other books that we hope that you think are hot at your local comic book shop. And we're going to go ahead and start off with Chad Smith. So, Chad, what do you got for us this week?
So I'm going to go with a 4-issue mini that should be out in trade by the time this show airs. Zorro, Man of the Dead, by Sean Murphy, published through Massive Publishing. Sean Gordon Murphy, you're probably familiar with his work with, what's his Batman White Knight?
Yeah, we covered that on the last comic shop here.
And so he has his style of cartooning. It's very sketchy, but also at the same time very, very dynamic. And anyway, so this is a modern addition to the Zorro mythos where the heirs of Zorro's lineage, the heir is cut down in front of his children by a drug cartel that takes over the town of La Vega. And then the town's faith in Zorro never wavers. And so 20 years later, when the son is called to take over the mantle of Zorro, it's up to him and his sister, who has since joined that cartel as a muscle car driver. She's their getaway gal. But it's up to them to help bring back freedom to the city. The new Zorro believes he's the reincarnation of Zorro from the 1800s. Like I said, his sister's got that El Camino. You've got that Sean Murphy art. The storytelling is fun, frenetic, whimsical, and also gritty and violent, and there's a lot of murder. But at the end of the day, the thing that separates this from a book like Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees is it was an uplifting romp. It's all about freedom and those elements of Zorro that make you want to root for the hero. And so it also made me want to go back and revisit all the different versions of Zorro that I have in comic book form. I've got a great couple of collections that Image put out of Alex Toth's Zorro work from back in the day, the Matt Wagner series from Dynamite Press. That was wonderful. Even Antonio Banderas. Like, say what you will, I love those movies. But there's lots of great Zorro out there, and this is a fine, fine addition to that. It is Zorro, Man of the Dead.
All right. I'll have to check that out. I'm a huge fan of the Zorro. I love that series in the 90s with the Zorros. I think J.A. and I used to watch that series. In any case, J.A., what's your recommendation this week?
I am recommending George Orwell's Animal Farm, the graphic novel, as adapted and illustrated by Odyr, O-D-Y-R. So I assume it's pronounced Odyr, but if I pronounce that wrong, I apologize. This is out of Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Press. 2019, and it is the story of Animal Farm. Anthropomorphized animals that take over a farm and end up running it the exact same, as bad as the human that was running it before. If you haven't read Animal Farm in, I don't know, 6th grade, 7th grade, when do you have to read Animal Farm?
8th or 9th even. Double plus good.
It's all about essentially, George Orwell retelling the Russian Revolution and Stalinist era, but with animals. So like Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, animals subverting your idea of what evil is, because remember, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. The art is so beautiful in this. I mean, it's really incredible. It's like pastel painting. It's just
Yes, I mean, it's always cool when folks do those comic book adaptations of these literary classics. I recall when we talked about 1984 on this show, also by George Orwell. But although I don't think you guys like the art as much in that one, if I recall properly. You might have to go back and listen to that episode. But before you do that, my recommendation this week deals with one of my favorite anthropomorphic animals in pop culture, and that is Darkwing Duck. That's right. The terror that flaps in the night has a fantastic crew of Rogues Gallery members, rivaling, in my mind, folks like Batman and Spider-Man when you talk about the Liquidator and Quackerjack and Megavolt and Bushroot, Lilliput, Steelbeak, and so many more that are part of Darkwing Duck's classic Rogues Gallery. But no one stands higher among those rogues than Negaduck. And I'm talking about the continuing series that's being put out by Dynamite right now called Negaduck, written by one of my favorite comic book authors, which is Jeff Parker. Talked about his Mysterious the Unfathomable earlier in today's show, but he's teamed with artist Ciro Cagsaloni. I might have just butchered that, but it's got a lot of syllables. Any case, and it deals with Negaduck coming back to St. Canard and wanting to kind of not be so much a bad guy, but kind of like a treasure hunter in some ways, like use his nefarious ways just to get rich. He decides as his first attempt to do this, he's going to steal bad guy Taurus Bulba's airship and go and find the Midas Gauntlet, which will turn anything into gold. Why steal gold when you can just transform Frisbees or chickens into gold? Regardless, he ends up teaming up with his former teammates in the Fearsome Five. They go through a lot of awesome traps and like Indiana Jones-esque labyrinths to find this gauntlet, and eventually Taurus Bulba catches up with Negaduck, and they have a showdown. Bad guy to bad guy. It's really great. And unlike Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, this is a bad guy that you can kind of root for. Negaduck is charming, even in his kind of devious ways. So yeah, definitely check out Negaduck. It's full of that Jeff Parker humor that I've loved over the years so much. So, in any case, some humor that we hope that you like is all the humor that we interject into the Last Comic Shop every single week. We try to make comic books fun. That's right. So we're hoping that you rate, review, and subscribe so you don't miss any episodes coming up over the rest of the summer or the rest of the year. We're coming up to our 200th episode here in October, and it's already on the books, folks. We're going to be covering Watchmen. I know that it's all a buzz about this new animated Watchmen show and stuff like that. So we'll be covering that as our 200th episode come October. So hopefully you'll rate, review, and subscribe so you don't miss that.
There you go. You'll also want to check out our social media accounts and all those various social places, your X's, your Blue Skies, your whatevers. I think those are the two.
Threads!
Do we still do
Threads?
Yeah.
Threads.
The shirts and the pants and the threadsness.
I don't think people. Is Threads a thing anymore? I don't think it's a thing anymore.
Was it ever? Anyway, social media at Last Comic Shop. You can find us there. You'll find Golden Age covers to put you to bed at night. You'll find polls. You'll find collections of comics that we're flipping through just for funsies. All that and more waits for you there. You can also find links to our merch store. Mr. J.A., what are we featuring this week?
Well, we've got, as always, at the merch store, you can get T-shirts, coffee mugs, tote bags. We've got the summer edition of the Last Comic Shop podcast T-shirt. And this week only, very nice, suitable cotton twill plaid shirts, button down. Perfect for that time you want to go out into the forest and kill somebody, chop them up and put them in the paint can.
I thought that's what you were going to go with. The Last Comic Shop paint cans. I don't understand why does paint like destroy? Why paint? Like does it?
Because works at the hardware store.
But does it corrode? Does it like break down flesh?
No,
like
it's not lime.
Well, that would be smarter, right? I mean, come on now. Jeez.
That's a lot of ground to cover. Yeah, those paint cans are pretty big. Like, how many of those can you bury?
Can we work this out, like, in terms of, like, what if this was, like, a word problem? Like, if you have X number of paint cans and a giant rhinoceros to cut up into pieces, how many would you have to bury to get... Yeah, because
what kind of home project are people working on to justify getting rid of 642 paint cans?
Well, here's the question I have. If she kills, like, a anthropomorphized deer and just strips off all the clothing, how are the cops going to know if it's a real deer or, like, a deer in the woods that the bear killed?
Just like how they knew that bitchy pig lady was the bitchy pig lady.
But you're right, J.A. What if it's just a normal deer, not dressed up? Would they even know?
Because that was killed by a bear. A deer killed by a bear, as opposed to a deer in Levi's killed by a bear in plaid LL Bean.
They cover that because that deer's family would go and look for them and then get them taxidermy and put them on the couch.
Here's the question. Here's another question. If the owl and the pig who are married, what kind of kid do they have? Because
do they have
because
a pig or an owl?
Because the mouse, mom's a mouse. So that one makes sense.
You've seen South Park. You know about Man, Bear, Pig.
Right. One thing we also have seen is like our recommendations at comic book shops, right, Chad?
Yeah, there we go. So while we might be the Last Comic Shop podcast, we don't want to be the Last Comic Shop. We encourage all of you guys to go out there, get your Beneath the Trees where nobody sees. Perhaps the reprinted issues are still available at your local shop. But Andy's right, it is the hot thing this year. Or you could go and check out Darkwing Duck and Negaduck by Jeff Parker as Andy's recommendation. Those books have been doing really well. Additionally, you could go with George Orwell's Animal Farm out of Houghton Mifflin, or you could go with one of my picks and look for that Zorro Man of the Dead by Sean Gordon Murphy out of Massive Press. All that and more waits for you potentially at your local comic shop. So make sure you hit those folks up and give them your business.
All right. And until next week, when we've got our Deadpool Wolverine review, yes, that's right, back with some movie mayhem in July, but whatever. I'm the host with the most, Andy Larson. I'm joined by Chad Smith and J.A. Scott, and we hope that you stay safe, stay cool, and if you're at the grocery store and you can't find moose, it's okay to get elk instead.
If you're shopping at the local Lowe's and you see somebody buying a lot of cans of paint, maybe give them a bit of a wide berth.
The Last Comic Shop podcast was a 2024 Black Angus production.